Hello ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to Anime Theory, where there's nothing too small to make a theory on. And speaking of smaller theories, it's time to cover one that I've been getting requests to cover quite a bit since my Fate of Light theory. So yeah, Death Parade. It's one of those anime that's been on my list to cover for quite a while. Heck, it's been in my intro since the start of Anime Theory. And I think it's about time to give it one. And man, this one I got today is pretty cool. But before we dive into that, how about a refresher on Death Parade? Death Parade takes place in a sort of afterlife, where humans who died are sent to be judged. The humans all arrive at a bar with no memories of their deaths, and are forced to play a game that they assume is a fight for their life. These tests are meant to bring out, or potentially create, the darkness deep within them, at which point they're judged. They either get sent to be reincarnated, or are sent to the void. Everyone back up to speed? Great, now let's dive into the theory. So, in the background of Death Parade's plot, there are some interesting things going on. Now sure, the show mainly focuses on the main characters, Decim and Chiyuki, as they judge the colorful cast of humans arriving at the bar Quin Decim. Behind that, however, there's an interesting smaller plot that the show almost seems to brush aside. One that brings in some interesting questions. In episode 5, a character named Castra is revealed, and is the overseer of all the deaths in the world. What she mentions about the death rate is interesting, as apparently, the average number of deaths has grown significantly. In fact, as Castra explains, about 7,000 people die an hour. Now if this were just caused by the exponential increase in population over time, that'd be fine. They could always create more and more help. The way it's explained, however, implies that this increase was sudden. Basically, since most of the facilities seem to have been caught off guard by the sudden rise in deaths, it implies that there's something stranger going on in the background. Interestingly as well, that 7,000 deaths an hour figure isn't far off from what the usual death rate is on our Earth currently, which is about 6,300 deaths an hour. It's interesting that, though there was certainly a rise in the death rate, this increase isn't in the thousands, implying that the event causing the increase in deaths isn't something like a nuclear war. Something else has to be causing the deaths, but what? Well, let's just say all these deaths might have a reason behind them, one that accounts for one of the most interesting connected universes in anime. In fact, going from Death Parade to the cause of the increased death rate doesn't require much effort. Just change one word, and you get it. That's right, what I'm saying is that there's a decent possibility that the cause of the increase in deaths is none other than the god of the New World himself, our buddy Light Yagami from the Death Note series. I know, it sounds a bit crazy. I mean, sure, the series share a similar name, and Death Parade was animated by the same studio that did Death Note's anime, but that isn't enough on its own to suggest the connection. Well, trust me, with what little background information we get from the show, there's certainly some evidence to suggest this. So firstly, let's go back to Castra and her death figures. Now, as mentioned previously, the death only increased by about 700-ish an hour when counted against our real-world death rate. We may be able to chalk up some of the deaths to a slight increase in the usual amount, but at most that would likely only result in about a 200 increase. It can't be anything too drastic, as the rise isn't massive enough to suggest that, but the rise itself is a bit too large to be called just a coincidence. Also, the implication that it's a more recent event means that this can't just be a normal rise as the population rises. Something obviously started recently enough for this rise to make the same impact it has had on the afterlife. Also, Castra's phrasing is interesting. When referring to the exact reason for the increase in deaths, she doesn't give any specifics, only that it's due to someone's idea of justice, used in quotation marks to imply that perhaps the justice isn't so just. Being that one of Death Note's many themes is the concept of justice, and how one's understanding of what justice means isn't always the same as another's, it certainly connects pretty well. While Light assumed that his killing of criminals was justice, L, his rival throughout the series, had a different concept of justice. The way Castra words this statement heavily works with the entire idea of the one person enacting his own form of justice upon the world. Also, the number makes quite a bit of sense as well. You see, the time that this anime likely takes place is closer to the end of Death Note, where Light is free from the conflict of his original rival, and now even has a lackey to do all of his dirty work. Now you may be asking, why would you say that? What proof do you have of that? Well, there's something interesting about this anime. Basically, Light appears directly in the anime. Yeah, seriously, no tiny Easter eggs. Instead, we literally get Light himself appearing in the anime. Now, to be fair, I guess there's a possibility that he's not Light, but that would be quite odd. Firstly, the appearance, from the hair to the outfit, it all looks exactly like Light. Alongside that, even subtle details like his posture and eyes are the same. Considering this was animated by Madhouse, it can't just be a coincidence that they'd put so much focus into a design that's all too reminiscent of their most popular anime's main character. Also, I want to point out how strange his appearance is in the anime itself. He's used as a test of sorts for the character Mayu, who decides to sacrifice Light for the sake of her idol. It was all a trap, however, and she actually just failed the test and was sent to the void. There are many things that are odd about this setup. Firstly, Light is shown alone, which doesn't work because there's always supposed to be a pair of people that meet in the afterlife to undergo the test. Also, this test seems extremely out of place, and considering that it was indeed a test, that means that Light wasn't going to be sacrificed at all. The show goes out of its way to make sure the person not only looks and acts like Light, but also to put him in a situation that separates him from any other human that had visited previously. And this is why I say that it has to take place near the end of Death Note as well. Remember, Light has to have died to end up here, so chances are the massive spike in deaths, it came from the latter part of Light's life. He was unrestricted, and could have his assistant kill anyone that was deemed a criminal. The timelines and appearance seem to line up a little too well. Now, as long as we are assuming that this is Light, this is a theory after all, then the question is, what happens to Light? Well, I have a guess. You see, Light has been using something to kill humans, something that normally would only be used by a Shinigami. He's placed in an odd middle ground, where judging would likely be impossible. When Ryuk mentioned not going to heaven or hell, perhaps what he meant is that Light couldn't be judged by the Arbiters. Because he used a device that's sole purpose is to kill humans, Light likely couldn't be judged, so instead, something else needed to happen to him. And man, isn't it interesting that I made a theory that Light would end up being a Shinigami a couple months ago? Well, there's a fair chance that because Death Note users can't be judged, they become Shinigami in the afterlife. Think about it, the Arbiters don't kill humans, they merely observe the deaths of humans and judge them. The Shinigami kill humans, but have nothing to do with any of the process afterward. The two different sides coexisting seems to fit together a little too well. And in the end, Death Parade has one of the most interesting connected universes in all of anime. Light Yagami, recently freed of his rival L, has been killing criminals like crazy. This is causing huge problems for the civilization of Arbiters, who are now forced to deal with the drastically increased death rate and all the issues that comes with it. Just as things start hitting the craziest point in Death Note, Light is killed off, and he ends up in a place he doesn't recognize, an afterlife he never could have foresaw. Unlike the other humans who come through there and get judged, however, Light is tainted. He used a Death Note, something that most humans would never come into contact with, and thus he was put into a unique position. Due to his odd circumstances, he was unable to be judged normally, and instead was transformed into a Shinigami, mimicking what he acted like on Earth. And, as we see in the Death Note recap films, once Light realizes he's a Shinigami, he has free reign on what to do afterwards. Potentially, he could start the cycle anew, always giving the Death Note to a new human to fix the human realm, while causing even more deaths, which then will cause even more problems for the Arbiters. Ironically, this decision to turn Light into a Shinigami for his crimes may have been one of the worst decisions they could have made. Now, the problem is only likely to escalate, and now the Arbiters and the humans are about to have a much larger problem. With a connection between the anime, not only does it lead to a cool connected universe, but it also leaves room open for the craziest sequel imaginable. But hey, that's just my crazy theory. Thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed. Oh yeah, and I got my last theory wrong. Apparently the manga disproves the My Hero Academia theory. Well, too bad, I guess. We all make mistakes. I'll give you some goldfish if you forgive me, though. Regardless, if you enjoyed this video, be sure to like, comment, and hey, maybe subscribe. Also, check out my other Death Note theories, since I have several lined up right here. Anyways, see you guys in the next video.